just open by saying that this is quite difficult for me, having known Rabbi Yellin from only a couple of years after I got to Israel, meeting him already in Itri Yeshiva, and having an ongoing connection with him and his family. While we're going to hear that he was a dear friend of everybody, and it's one of the things we'll need to note how many dear, dear friends he had, he was truly a dear friend of my father, Olav Shalom. We're on some level all sitting here today in this yeshiva because of things that he did, and we'll maybe talk about that for a few minutes, but this is very difficult. It's a time in Shulchan Aruch where we're not supposed to say Hespedim. We're already within the 30 days before Shavuos. But what we are allowed to say is Divrei Hisorus, inspiration. And since I really don't think we can properly be maspid Rav Yankel, properly eulogize him, what we can do, and what hopefully this evening will help us do, is take some inspiration, take some transformation in our lives from everything that he did and from all of the huge numbers of people, both adults as well as Talmidim, that he inspired and that he transformed their lives. And we need, as we think about Rav Yankel Zichrono Livrocha and what he was and what he stood for, that it should have a major impact on us. Rabbi Gamliel ben Oshel of Yehuda Anasi Omer, Yofet Talmud Torah im derech eretz, sheyigia shnehem mashkachas avon, b'chol Torah she'eni mo malacha sova b'teila v'goreres avon. Torah with derech eretz, Torah with good midos, Torah with parnasa, the two different explanations. Sheyigias avon, sheyigias shnehem mashkachas avon. The struggle, the striving, the effort just pushes away sin. And then the Mishnah continues, Kol oskim imatzibur yoskim imoim l'shem shamayim shezchus avosam misayosam v'tzitkosam omedes la'ad ve'atem ma'ale ani alechem schar kilo asisem. That anyone who is involved with the tzibur, with the public, with the community, has to do it l'shem shamayim, for the merits of our forefathers. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov stand in their merit. And in addition to learning pshat in the two pieces of this Mishnah, the Maral wants to know what's the connection. What's the connection between Torah and derech eretz, which is mashkachas avon, and oskim im hatzibur l'shem shamayim? So the Torah im derech eretz mashkachas avon, says the Maral, a human being has two parts. There's a physical part and there's a spiritual, emotional part. And the derech eretz, the involvement in derech eretz, is a tikkun for the physical part. And the involvement in Torah is a tikkun and a hashlama for the spiritual part. And the two of them together, the yegia, the struggle, the striving, there's no room left for avon. Rabbi Yankel and this is how we got to know him first, was an oskim b'tzorchei tzibur. He was worried about the klal. He was worried about the yeshiva. He was worried about the talmidim. He was worried about the finances. Before there was even a yeshiva, he was one of the people who was involved with building the yeshiva before we ever came on the scene. He was instrumental in engineering the merger of Darche Noam with Shapell's. If you're ever wondering about this strange Darche Noam Shapell's Darche Noam, the David Shapell College existed, and Darche Noam had started. And whereas in most yeshivas, when you have two Rosh Yeshivas, they usually have a machlokas and split off and create two yeshivas, he had this idea that it was actually possible to take two yeshivas and put them together because they stood for the same thing and they had the same agenda, and he worked tirelessly to make it happen. And it happened. And then after it happened, he stayed connected, always worrying about every detail. Oskin b'tzorchei tzibur, and he did it purely l'shem shamayim. He had no benefit. He had no agenda. Those of you who know him well knows he had no ego. All he cared about was how do we make this better, and how can we get another government sponsorship, and how can we find somebody else to support, and how can we get more talmidim, and how can we make sure that this is working and that's working. But that was the oskim, that was the derech eretz. That was the physical side. Talmud Torah. He was devoted to Talmud Torah. He lived Talmud Torah. Just have to share with you a short email from somebody who didn't even learn in this yeshiva, but he had learned with Rabbi Yankel before he started learning here, because he was involved here on an administrative level from day one. And most of you know him that he was also sitting in this Beis Midrash, but it wasn't always like that. He was doing in our Beis Midrash, what he was doing in our Beis Midrash, he was doing in another Beis Midrash, in a different Baal Tshuva yeshiva. And a Talmud that he learned with over there writes me, I can't even begin to tell you how Rav Yellin influenced my life. Despite more than 15 years of yeshiva education, this was not a Baal Tshuva. I did not enjoy learning until I had the privilege to learn one-on-one with Rav Yellin for more than a year and a half after college. He became a true friend and mentor. I'll never forget the special times we shared together. But this is a pattern that repeats itself with everybody you talk to. Learning Torah was what it was all about for Rav Yaakov. And the only reason he was running around trying to make sure that the yeshiva was functioning properly and had a little money and had a little food and had a building and had electricity so that we could have more limud Torah. And it was all about the limud Torah. It was Talmud Torah im derech eretz yegias shnehem. That was his life. What's the connection, says the Maral, with oskim b'tzorchei tzibur? Torah is more than a mitzvah. Torah is all-encompassing. Torah encompasses everything. And that's the power of Torah. And a person who is osek b'tzorchei tzibur, he's not helping an individual. He's helping Klal Yisrael, which is everything. Torah is everything. Klal Yisrael is everything. And the person who is engrossed and exerting himself for Torah and derech eretz and Klal Yisrael, that's the Adam HaShalem. One of the things that I picked up during the Shiva, listening to the family, listening to the Hespedim at the Levaya, helped me understand something that I had always observed without understanding. Rav Yankel learned with the entire range of Talmidim that we had. He used to learn privately with some Talmidim who were the strongest in the yeshiva because they needed more than they could get in the shiurim. And he learned with all kinds of Talmidim, all the way to Talmidim that if they wouldn't have had extra help, they wouldn't have made it in the shiurim. And he worked with them and struggled with them and explained it to them again and again and again till they made it. And there are, without an exaggeration, I am sure, hundreds of our alumni on one level or another that say they can learn Torah today at the level that they do because of the time they spent with Rav Yankel. What was the secret? What was the secret that enabled him to do that? And I must confess that until I heard from the family and at the Levaya, I never understood it, and now I understand it. But looking back, it was obvious. Rav Yankel had a thirst and a drive to understand everything that there was to understand. For him, learning Torah and not understanding, what did you do? Such that I heard from the family that he would sometimes have a sleepless night because he couldn't understand a marsha or he couldn't understand a svara. And when he understood it, the face lit up. And all he wanted to do was learn with people who were interested in understanding. You want to understand Torah? I'll help you understand. Because if you don't understand, you're not learning. You want to learn? Let's understand. And therefore, it didn't matter whether he needed to explain it once and you got it like that, or he needed to explain it 10 times. And when he was ready to explain it to you an 11th time, when you didn't understand it and you're ready to say, okay, I don't get it, it's not that important. And he's saying, you don't understand it, let me explain it to you again. So what message does that send to the Talmud? Understanding Torah is important. Understanding Torah is critical. If you don't understand it, we can't leave the table. We'll try again, because you have to understand it. That's what it's all about. He lived that in his life, and I believe that that's what he brought to the table. Literally brought to the table when he was sitting there learning with our Talmidim, from the strongest Talmidim to the weakest Talmidim. He didn't care who he's learning with. You know, there are specialists. I can only give a high shiur. I can only teach beginners. I don't have patience for the people who don't understand. I don't want to rush so fast with the people who are so sharp. To Rav Yankel, it didn't matter. Because all he was interested in is transmitting Torah to somebody who wants to understand. And of course, it also helped him understand. And that's also what he wanted. The love of Torah, the love of understanding, we're going to hear from some of the other speakers who go back with Rabbi Yellin much, much further than I do. Ezehu chacham halomeid mikol adam. Rav Yankel viewed every interaction as another opportunity to learn something else. Whether it was Musar, whether it was Hashkafa, whether it was Gemara. A number of the Rebbeim here experienced. They'll give a shmooze, we'll give a shiur, and he'll be there listening, and he'll come over afterwards. Oh, that was gavaldik. Oh, you helped me understand something that I was bothered by, that I was troubled by. This is going to make my davening better. It's going to make my Rosh Hashanah better. It's going to make my Kabbalas HaTorah better. Thank you very much. And it was honest. There was not a drop of anything by Rav Yankel except just a love of Jews, a love of Torah, a love of Klal Yisrael. How can we have more limud Torah? How can we have more understanding of Torah, more yiras shamayim, more good midos? That's what we have to take away in our own learning, in our own yiras shamayim, in our own growth, and in ours as Rebbeim, our own education of our Talmidim.